Hi everybody, this is my waterfall tank, and this morning I came down and I found some leaking again. Now a couple days ago I had some leaking going on. It was enough that I needed to put some buckets behind it and collect the water that was dripping. My carpet was all wet. And gradually it got less and less, and eventually by the end of the day it had just sort of stopped, and the wood in the back dried up and everything kind of went away. So I had my suspicions as to why, but I was going to wait and see. The leak's not terrible anyway. I can manage it with a bucket, so I'm not in any kind of panic to get this fixed. My suspicion is that up in this area in here, I only did sort of a halfway job of waterproofing it, and also sort of up underneath of this area. The idea when I built it was going to be that the water was going to run down this track or channel and then spill out down here. This was maybe a vague idea of maybe having a little bit of water sprinkling down. Never did I have the intention of having water flowing over this. This was meant to be more like a water slide type effect that made the water go that way, for the purposes of keeping this area dry. And I've even got a big sort of partition right here. This area was supposed to be the wet area. This area was supposed to be the dry area. So while I did waterproof the bottom, just in case any water splashed over or anything like that, I was only able to do so much for waterproofing sort of back in there and up in there. Remember, this is made out of expandable foam, so it's not like a flat, smooth, paintable surface. I was painting with silicone caulk that I had thinned out, so it did have a nice paintable texture, but as far as how it would flow and run into all the cracks and nooks and crannies, I suspect that I did not do the best job. Maybe I should have grabbed a flashlight before we did this, but maybe I didn't do the best job of keeping it completely waterproofed up under there. And when the water's flowing thoroughly, I get a lot of flow over this area right here, and I think some of it's sort of curling and lipping up underneath of there. It might be running down into areas in that back corner that I never really expected to get wet, other than the occasional, maybe a splash or two might get up there, and it might now have water running over it. So what happens is the water changes course all the time in this. Every time you look at it, the water's flowing somewhat differently, much like a natural water course. As things move and get more soaked with water, or the plants grow, you know, it sort of pushes the water this way or that way. You know, as these plants grow, the water will stream over here or it'll run over that way. So you're always getting little slight changes in the water. But more importantly, as the filter gets clogged up, and it gets clogged up fast in this tank, it reduces the flow of the water. So when the water flow reduces, the leaking seems to reduce. And yesterday I had some company coming over, so I did a water change and I got the filter cleaned out. I also put some new animals in there yesterday, so I got it nice and cleaned up, put a brand new filter in it. When I came down this morning, the tank was leaking again and it was dripping again, and now by this afternoon it is slowed way down, and it's just basically back to the wood is sort of damp back there. So I really suspect that right up in here is where my problem area is. Now we come to the point of, do I really want to tear that apart and try to re-waterproof it, or do I want to just deal with it and keep some buckets sitting in the back, and, you know, just in case. It's not like it's going to spring a leak and I'm going to spray water everywhere. It basically just weeps out and drips off of the wood. A lot of it actually runs. I thought I stepped on a cat behind me. I stepped on my fan that was on the floor. I moved a bunch of stuff out of the way to shoot this video, and I was expecting to be behind the tank, not standing here in front of it. So here we are standing in front of it, and now I'm tripping over the stuff I moved around from behind it. Where was I? It's made out of spray foam, so, you know, the expandable foam stuff So if water, let's say we're leaking in a crack up here, once it gets into the sort of internal structure of this big mass of foam, you have no idea how that water is going to run and move through the structure internally. It might make its way all the way over here and then eventually leak out over here. But it may flow all the way through the inside. It may flow down and spread out and leak over a wide area in the bottom. I have no idea how the water moves through there. So even if I were to be able to identify a specific spot in the back of, okay, this is where the water is leaking out of, that doesn't tell me where it's leaking through from the front. So the only way I'm going to be able to do this is to get in there and pull all that stuff out and start with my best suspicion of being, you know, this area, and trying to like do a better job at waterproofing it, maybe spray some stuff up in there so I can spray upwards and get some really serious coverage. I don't know. I've got so much new growth going on in here that I don't even want to think about starting to pull all this stuff apart. I was looking yesterday. This creeping Jenny is totally rooted in to my log here now. I mean, all of this is completely rooted in and growing across the face of this log. It's in a planter back here. It's in a little planter. It was supposed to grow up and over, but this log is so soft and rotten and moss covered and everything that I've got, you know, you can see the root system right there growing right into it. So all of this is new growth. This is bugleweed that I've got from out in the yard. It's a ground cover called a juta. I'm getting all this beautiful new growth coming off of this. I found a bulb out in the yard. Where is it? Right here is a, I'm not sure what this bulb is, but that's going to grow. So we're probably going to have some crocus flower or something, you know, blooming here pretty soon. My moss and everything is just growing amazing. And it's because I've got it under this super fantastic LED grow light, and we will be talking about that. I've been kind of busy over the last few days, but we will be talking about that light here in the very near future. At any rate, we've got a lot going on as far as new growth and everything. This is really doing well. I'm really excited about this too. This is my water sprite. We can almost start, another common name it goes by is Indian fern, and it will grow emergent just fine. It just sort of has to adapt to it and get used to it. And in fact, now that I'm looking, I can even see back here, this is all, see that sort of, well, you can't really see it. See, that's got like a trident looking 3 fingers on the top of it. That's a new shoot of Java fern. I've never seen the 3 fingers on top like that. So when I took some of this Java fern, this Anubias, this water sprite, this is the water sprite we're talking about. It's all sort of dying and wilting and everything, but the root mass is tucked up under here. And this is the new growth we're getting off of that root mass. These Anubias leaves that were underwater are starting to die off, but I am starting to get new shoots of Anubias coming out that will be acclimated to atmospheric air, just like we're seeing with the Java fern back here. So we're really starting to get some good solid new growth here, and I don't want to tear it all apart, especially if it's going to be just for a leak that only happens when this thing's up and running at full crank. Because I can turn the volume of the pump down. I can set the volume of the pump about 1/4 of what it's set at now if I want it. But the filter gets clogged up so fast, I almost don't need to. I just really kind of have to worry about it. Like when I first change the filter, I'm probably going to be getting some, you know, a little bit of leakage or something like that. I don't know. I wanted to save this for its own video. I want to show you around the back side of it, but by doing so, I'm going to sort of ruin what I think of as my secret tank. This looks completely different from the back side of it, and it's almost like being in a different room and looking at a different aquarium. So to set the stage for you for a moment, you know, this is kind of what we're looking at from the front, and we got my fish room and various stuff on the floor and clutter and so on and so forth. But when we come around back here, this bucket is what I sit on when I shoot video facing the camera, and I'm able to set my tripod up over here, and I can put my little clip light on my, you know, tank stand and everything. But this is the back side of what the waterfall looks like. It's all, you know, expandable foam and braces and pieces of wood holding the thing up. I never claimed to be a carpenter or an engineer. But when I sit down to shoot my videos, I've got this awesome view where I'm not blinded by that LED. You know, I've got this whole structure in front of me that's sort of shading my eyes from the LED. But I can see my tanks and everything. I've got my native tank sitting right here behind me. Oh, my fish just chilling out right next to my head. And then we've got the backside of my waterfall tank. And it's just like a completely different tank. Now, I'll admit the filter's not necessarily attractive right there, but I've got this little ledge down here that I can put some plants on if I wanted to, or even just put a you know, a cloth on it to cover that wood. But this is what you're seeing when we look in my native tank and you're seeing the reflection behind us. It's this. So I can also put like a little roller blind or something across here, or even just a drape, and then when I'm shooting video I can just hang it down and it'll block the light from this. But this is what we're looking at as far as the leaking, and it actually looks like it's all dried up now, but I'm getting water is like weeping across this. You know, it's definitely still wet. Yeah, it's definitely still wet. But the water just sort of weeps across the back of this, and then it'll sort of drip in a spot here and there, and then it gets on this, and again it just sort of puddles up, and eventually it drips, and it drips sort of right off this edge. And it's not much, but it does it. It drips, you know, and some of it will weep over this edge and it'll drip, so sometimes I have to set a bucket right over there. And, you know, over the course of the day, I get, you know, that much water in the bucket. But that's enough water. I don't want that on my carpet, you know, and over time, what is that going to do to this wood? I did actually spend the money and buy, like, good quality you know, outdoor plywood. It's meant to be able to get wet. I figured just in case, let's just go ahead and do that. So we should be okay. It's not marine plywood, but it is, you know, it is going to be okay if it gets a little bit wet. So there you go. There's the first real look. I have put some video of this on my Patreon page. There's one of my frogs. I got 4 of those yesterday and put them in there. I'm really digging them so far. Haven't seen the crayfish in several days. I haven't seen the darter or sculpin in several days. I do occasionally, in fact I can see it right now. If you look right through there, you can see the fin of that suckerfish. And for all the people who have suggested that this tank is not well oxygenated enough, you know, go ahead and have a look at the bubbles that swirl around through this tank. This tank is very well oxygenated. Now, it doesn't have a roaring current moving through it, but it is very well oxygenated. And when you think of all that water that's flowing and dripping and running down the front, you know, all that surface area, all that splashing and bubbling and gas exchange, and then that water is then doing this. I don't need an air stone in this tank. This tank is very, very well oxygenated. Full gas exchange is happening in there, and air stone won't change that at all. Now, a little power head in here might not be a bad idea, but definitely don't need the air stone in this tank. So anyway, that's my little ramble about what's going on with my waterfall tank. I am going to be working on the lighting as well. I don't really know what the point of this video was supposed to be, other than just kind of a generalized update on the waterfall tank. But I have actually ordered some they're the cord sets that's just basically a hanging plug with a socket on the end, so you can hang lights facing straight down. And I've got these LED spotlights, and I've got floodlights. You know, I've pointed out before that I've already got this one hanging up here, so I can, you know, this gives me a different kind of lighting by turning on this, etc., etc. So we will be talking about that at some point. That's what I'd kind of planned on working on again today, but when I came down and once again saw the water dripping in the back, it sort of left me a little disheartened, kind of took the steam out of my motivation. And, you know, here we are. So I figured at the very least I would shoot a video kind of chatting about what's going on with the waterfall tank. This really was meant to be my project today. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it still will be. My cord sets have not yet arrived, so I can't really do a lot. One of the things I want to do, just to give you a little teaser idea, is the lights we just looked at, the ones I've got down here on the floor. These are 25-degree angle beams, so it's a fairly narrow beam shining down. And I've done some preliminary experiments with them hanging straight down and shining into the tank. So while it may look a little brightly lit and awkward from the front, I think that view that we were just experiencing from the back would look amazing with that kind of light shining down into the tank. So we'll have to see. Again, that'll be a video in its own right. We'll talk about lighting and what you can do with it simply by changing the positioning of the lights and the angle, you know, and so on and so forth. And I will be shooting a video about this LED and color rendering and why this LED does such a good job of making these plants grow so well and why the tank looks so beautiful underneath of it, and so on and so forth. So make sure you're subscribed, because that'll be coming up real soon. Maybe I'll shoot that this afternoon. I don't know. Again, I'm just kind of rambling on about this tank today that really knocked the wind out of my sails when I saw it leaking again. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, as I already said. And then, of course, don't forget this one here is my waterfall tank. So thanks again, and I will see you real soon on the next one.